Kazimierz is a district located south of the old city and divided from it by the wide Dietla Street, in the middle of which stretches a green belt known as Planty Dietlowski. In the past, the areas of Kazimierz were covered with marshes. The area was an island surrounded by numerous branches of the Wisla, which often flooded it. The village of Bałwów, located near the streets of Wawrzynca, Dajwor, and Szeroka, was the largest during the period before foundation privileges were granted. Life in the villages concentrated around churches, which have been built here since the 12th century. The settlements located at the Church of St. Michael and the presently non-existent churches of St. Lawrence and St. Jacob became a part of the city, which received foundation privileges in 1335. The city of Kazimierz, called in this manner on account of the name of its founder and longtime benefactor, King Kazimierz Wielki, became a separate entity with 1,500 inhabitants and occupied a surface area of 50 hectares. Cracow was separated from Kazimierz by a side branch of the Vistula, which was filled in the 19th century. Similar to Cracow, Kazimierz received foundation privileges based upon the Magdeburg Law, which resulted in a ban on operation for inns and a ban on the settlement of craftsmen. A market square was set out with a surface area similar to the Krakowian market square, but today is 4 times smaller, and which is known as Plac Wolnica. The market square had a town hall, a city wait, trading booths, and a shearing room. Kazimierz was surrounded by a wall, and it was possible to reach the city through 4 gates with bridges. The king funded churches, brought monks from Europe, built monasteries, and planned to construct a university. Work on the university was commenced, yet never finished. In spite of the ruler's dream of Kazimierz becoming the main center of Poland, this has never become true. But this does not change the fact that Kazimierz was one of the most important medieval Polish cities. Today's Kazimierz is perceived by many as the Jewish district. According to this opinion, the city, established in 1335, was meant to be the home for the followers of Judaism. In reality, the truth is more complex, as Cracow's satellite city was originally established as a Christian city. Jewish people had already begun to arrive in Cracow in the second half of the 12th century, which was related to the Crusades and the cruelty of European knights toward Jewish settlers. During the reign of Kazimierz Wielki, Jews received a number of privileges. They had a commune of their own denomination within the borders of Cracow, and they were allowed to trade and to deal in real estate. The king, aware of the Jewish people's familiarity with economic issues, surrounded himself with advisors of Jewish origin. They had a significant impact on the city's economic development. As was mentioned earlier, Jews had their own commune. Therefore, there was no need to establish a separate city for them. The reason for the influx of Jews into Kazimierz was due to the anti-Semitic atmosphere related to the seizure of houses for debts. Rumors started to circulate about Jews making offerings of infants, the poisoning of wells, and the seductive and devilish powers of young Jewish women. At the beginning of the 15th century, there were anti-Semitic riots, during which fanatic preachers, openly postulating their hatred of Jews, had an active share. Mandatory sale of houses and lands belonging to the Jewish people started. In exchange, they received Plac Szczepański, which continued to be their place of residence until 1495. This was the year of the Great Fire. It was concluded that the Jews were guilty of arson, and they were banished from Cracow upon the order of King Jan Olbracht. At that moment, the Jewish people began to settle in Kazimierz in the northeastern part of the city, near the present-day Józefa and Wąska streets. Selection of this place as their new residence was not accidental, as a Jewish community originally from Cracow and Prague had already existed here from the 14th century. A synagogue, today known as the Old Synagogue, used to operate here. Over the course of time, the Jewish part of the city grew, absorbing the surrounding streets and squares, and Jews from all over Europe started arriving in the city. In the middle of the 17th century, the number of Jewish people in Kazimierz amounted to approximately 5,000. The 16th century was the heyday of Kazimierz, both with respect to its Jewish and Christian sections. Thanks to the rapid development of the city, numerous synagogues were built, as well as churches and monasteries designed by famous Italian architects. whereas older temples and churches were restored. Manor houses and richly decorated townhouses were also built. They are a characteristic feature of the secular architecture of Kazimierz, instilling it with a magical climate even today. Schools were established as well as orphanages and bathhouses, and in 1527 the first water supply system was built. The first rabbi, Jakub Polak, established the first Talmudic school here, called Yeshiva, which later became internationally famous. At Yeshiva, the cream of the Jewish intelligence was educated, including Mojżesz Isserles, the most illustrious rabbi of Cracow, as well as Natan Nata Szpina, the first rector of the school. In the second half of the 16th century, during the reign of King Zygmunt August and Stefan Batory, Jews received several other privileges, which was extraordinary during those anti-Semitic times in Europe. The time of Kazimierz's Golden Age was characterized by harmonious development of both nations on the basis of mutual respect and tolerance for each other, and was living proof of the coexistence of two nations so differing in their religious and cultural issues. There was no other place in Poland where the sphere of mutual penetration of these two cultures would be so wide and so long-lasting. Poland, as a country without pyres, became the second Jerusalem for Jews, a promised land. This function is commemorated by a plaque in the old town hall on Plac Wolnica, presenting a scene of the acceptance of Jews in Poland during the Middle Ages. The Golden Age of Kazimierz came to an end at the moment of transferring the capital to Warsaw in 1609. Both cities, Cracow and Kazimierz, lost their significance. In the subsequent years, the city suffered from numerous fires and epidemics. The greatest of these epidemics was in 1651, claiming the lives of 35,000 people. In the second half of the 17th century, Poland experienced the Swedish deluge. Kazimierz was ruined and plundered on a scale not seen either before or after. The invaders looted valuables, works of art, and even items of everyday use. Even the copper roofs were plundered. During the Third Partition of Poland in 1800, Kazimierz was incorporated into Cracow. The most horrible chapter in the history of Kazimierz was during World War II. Cracow, occupied by Nazi forces from September 6, 1939, became the capital of the general government, and the Wawel became the seat of Hans Frank, the head of the governorship. The 68,000 Jews, which constituted 25% of the population of Cracow at that time, were deprived of their rights and punished by death for the slightest of offenses. The Nazis took over Jewish property, closed down synagogues and schools, and introduced a mandate for them to wear bands with the Star of David. At the beginning, the Jews were forced into so-called voluntary resettlement to other places within the borders of the general government. Cracow, considered a prehistoric German city by the Nazi administration, was to be free from Jews. In 1941, similar as in Warsaw and other Polish cities, a Jewish ghetto was established. However, in contrast with the capital, it was not established within the area of the Jewish district, but in a part of Cracow separated from the old city by the Vistula, today known as Podgórze. All Jews were transferred to the ghetto in 1941. Many of them died of hunger and cold in the ghetto, during mass executions, and at the work camp in Płaszów, located on the outskirts of the city, as well as in extermination camps. The ghetto was liquidated in 1943, and its inhabitants divided into two groups, those fit for work and those unfit. The first group was transferred to Płaszów, and the second group, elderly people, the sick, women, and children, were shot in the square, which today is known as Plac Bohaterów Getta, Heroes of the Ghetto Square. During the Nazi occupation of Cracow, over 65,000 followers of Judaism were killed. The 7-century-long history of the Jewish nation in Kazimierz was brutally broken. Those who survived and returned to Cracow after the end of the war were met with reluctance by the Poles who had taken up a residence in their former homes. The last opportunity to preserve the Jewish character of the district was forfeited when, after growing anti-Semitism and the establishment of Israel,